Vibe coding is being sold as like this amazing solution. But from a security point of view, it's just my opinion, it seems a nightmare.
It is amazing to me the things that we do the moment that there is a new technology.
Yeah. So Tanya, I believe you got a lot of API chapters or information in this book, right?
This is my first book, Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. And for every single chapter, I had a bunch of friends on each month, and we went over all the topics in the book and answered all the questions at the end of the chapter. And so I plan to do the same thing with the next book. Get the security influence into every single AI. This is my plan in my head.
Everyone, David Bommel coming to you from Black Hat. Thanks to ThreatLocker for sponsoring this and allowing me to interview another amazing guest. Tanya, great to see you in person.
Oh my gosh, finally we meet.
Exactly. It's so nice to have you on the show and meet you in person. And I know we're going to get a lot of great information from you because I've read this book, fantastic book. You've written a new book, right?
Yes, I have.
So tell us about your new book.
So my new book is called Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding, and it is the follow-up to the first book. So the first book was how to build a security program and how to do the job of application security. But then I realized after teaching that and doing that for years, the people I really need to reach are software developers.
Yeah.
If I can't reach them, I'm just singing to the choir and we're all by ourselves not getting anything done. And so this book covers agnostic advice for every language, as well as 10 programming languages, 8 frameworks, and then a secure system development lifecycle, but from the developer point of view. Like, I'm going to a threat model. What the heck is that?
Yep.
What should I expect? Am I in trouble? And so I tried to make it for developers rather than for security professionals.
I love that. I mean, so everyone who gives me those comments that I don't read books, that my bookshelf just looks pretty. Notice all my bookmarks here. So I definitely read the books that I get. So Tanya, all the rage at the moment, vibe coding, right? Mm-hmm. What can go wrong?
Everything. So I have to admit, I have been vibe coding too.
Which is fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
When I'm creating training, a thing that I do is I start with bad code, then I make it better, then I make it the best code.
Understand,
right?
yeah.
And there'll be lots and lots of different defenses. And I find that I can just ask the AI, make code that does this. And 90% of the time, it's already the bad code and I don't have to undo anything. It's already my perfect example.
I love that. That's a great use case.
I know, right? And then I'm like, okay, so I'm going to add one defense to make it better.
Yep.
And then the AI can usually do that with me. If I'm very clear with what I want, I'm like, okay, so I need this to be a stored procedure. I need to validate this input. And this is what if I'm really clear with it, it can do that. But then I'm like, make this rock solid. And it's like, and so what can go wrong is that we are, with every single thing with AI, we get something from it and we aren't an expert enough to check if it's right.
Yeah.
Right? So I was writing a self-reflection for a performance review. And I was like, hey, I did this year. Can you make it sound like my boss is going to read it instead of Tanya tone? This is like professional tone. And it added all these awards that I didn't win.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's very flattering that those are your thoughts on me, AI. And so, but I'm an expert on me. So I know I didn't do those things. But what if you were writing an article about me?
Exactly, I wouldn't know.
And then you wouldn't know, right? And so lots of developers have never had secure coding training, have never read a secure coding book or any sort of security thing. Like when you look around this conference of 25,000 people that are at all the different events this week, a very small percentage are developers. And
Yep.
so what I wish for, which you didn't ask yet.
No, tell me what I need to ask you, Tanya.
No, I really want every developer to be able to look at code and see that's not right. I want them to be able to read it, which, yes, they should be able to do already, but be able to see like, some defenses are missing here. Or like, I see they tried to do this, but that doesn't look right to me. I should check it. Because if we could do that, vibe coding could be great.
Yeah, but the problem is they're not selling vibe coding on that premise, are they? They're selling vibe coding like, I can code, like you. I'll be like you, Tanya, just magically. And
I know. So I'm seeing a lot of startups start up where the founders have never written code before. And they're like, I vibe coded my entire product.
Yeah, and what could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? I know. And so I'm seeing a lot of people use MCP servers, which is super cool. And then they're plugging different plugins in. And they're improving drastically and quickly. And I'm very excited about that. But I need more of them to be trained on secure code. And one of the problems that I'm sure we're all seeing is what it's trained on is free open source stuff that's on the internet.
Yep.
And how many open source projects do you know can afford a security professional to do thorough testing and code review and all of that stuff? None that I know, except OWASP projects, because we are those nerds, right? And so generally the code that we see in those projects is, and so we need to find a way to like get the security influence into every single AI. This is my plan in my head.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm being a bit facetious about like vibe coding. So let's get the numbers or sort of like your gut feel on things. Did you say 90% of the time vibe coding is writing bad security code? Something like that?
90% of the time when I ask it to make an example for one of my classes, it is the bad example without the security defense that I want.
But you're not asking it to write bad code. You're just telling give me code.
No, so I'll say like, write a login screen for me.
Yep.
And then I'll look and there's no input validation.
Yep.
Or they take the password and they don't salt it or hash it.
Yep.
Or it calls out to the database, but it's not a stored procedure. It's dynamic SQL, or all the other things that I want to teach.
All the wrong things.
Yeah, so I'll say, do this. And sometimes they are there. They're not always right or as strict. So I'm very strict. I'm quite opinionated. When you write a book, you have strong opinions, right? So I'm more strict than the average person. So they might, for instance, sanitize out a couple of characters. And I'm like, no, I want input validation, then either sanitization or escaping, then, you know what I mean? So, but usually I find the controls completely missing.
I mean, we had Black Hat, right? So security focused. So would you, and I'm putting you on the spot here, so don't answer the question if you don't want to, but would you ever recommend that a client takes a vibe coding product and puts it online?
Directly? No.
Yes.
I actually, so I'm giving a talk at DEF CON called Minimal Viable Security.
Yep.
And it's like, this is the AppSec poverty line. So you have no money for AppSec. You don't have a team. What is the bare minimum you must do to be on the internet? And it's not that. It's above that. Like there's certain things that we absolutely must do, especially if we're doing anything to do with like user data that's sensitive. So for instance, if it's like, I subscribe to these sports results.
Yep.
That's not super sensitive.
Yeah.
Right? Versus this is my credit card info, this is my personal health info, etc. Right? Like that's a lot more serious. But for things where the bar is low, what do we need? And it's way more than I vibe coded this and I pressed deploy.
I'm glad you saying this, because I think the warning is vibe coding is being sold as like this amazing solution. But from a security point of view, it's just my opinion, it seems a nightmare.
It's 100% a nightmare for security teams because we were already struggling to try to keep up with DevOps folks. Like we're already like, please get back here. And like, we're trying to DevSecOps, or we're trying to do this, and we're trying to do that. And we're trying to shift left and start security earlier and all of the buzzwords. And then now they're going 10 times faster than that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no. And so my idea is a few things. So like one, train the AI on secure code.
Yes.
And that could be for now till we have 1 million lines of secure code for it to train on, because that's the bare minimum according to Anthropic. So till then, we could have a reg server with all the secure coding books. Start with that, then have prompts that instruct it, do this, check against this, then generate the code. Then have another agent come along and review for maybe, I have a secure coding guideline I'm giving away lately. Review for these 48 things. If these 48 things aren't there, fix it. And then have that code come out. Then you start running tools. If we did that, like we would be getting probably better code than the average dev writes, right? Like, so I feel like we can get there.
Okay.
I feel like we could get there very quickly. And then past that, I want to train the AIs themselves.
But do you think it's practical? It's like Pandora's box, right? It's been let out now. People think that they can just use ChatGPT or whatever LLM out there to write this wonderful code for them. You know, for you to force them now to use a secure coding LLM or like whatever vibe coding platform, do you think that's viable? It's going to have a big push from the industry to get there.
So do I think I can force people? No, I do not.
Yeah.
But if you go to the source, so work with Anthropic, so if you're at Anthropic or OpenAI or wherever, call me.
Tanya,
right?
For sure. Yep.
Because there's many of us security folks that would love to positively influence and assist in this.
Yeah.
But I think that they care as well. I think that OpenAI and Claude and all of them do not want to be responsible for insecure code. There's nothing in it for them to not do a good job, right? So I think that they are motivated. I know that some of them are concerned and that this is a priority. And so getting them code that we can scan that's actually extremely high quality, it's very complicated because none of my clients want to share their code, right? Would you?
Yep.
So I feel like we have to find a place in the middle. However, MPC servers are opening up tons of things. Like there's so many cool plugins now for that, right? And so you, before we started recording, we talked about shift left. So for those that don't know, that means starting security earlier in the system development lifecycle, ideally right at the kickoff meeting. You have a security nerd there and it's like, hi, I'm Tanya. I come in peace. I'm here to help. I'm not scary or mean. And I want that person to help them the whole way through. And so I feel like a lot of security tools we have now for AppSec are very right. Like a pen test, the very end.
Exactly.
We do static analysis, but after they wrote everything. And the ones that are in the IDE, I see devs turning them off all the time because they're really memory thick. Like it slows me down. It just keeps telling me I'm wrong. And then it's like, bad, you use this function. Okay, cool. What do? Don't use it. Well, thanks. That's very helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so if we could have the AI have checks inside of it before they even see the code, and then we give them assistance with reviewing it, I feel like we could do a lot better. Like I want to take off as much heavy lifting from them as I can.
It's a big job, right?
I'm working on it.
So I'm going to make it worse for you. There's some security researchers checked MCP servers on the internet. I think they tested like 200 of them. None had authentication.
I saw that. And
you saw that, right?
It made me sad.
So, I mean, people are throwing this stuff out there.
I know.
It seems like they're just rushing ahead. Vibe coding, MCP servers, all the rest of it.
Breakneck speeds cause accidents, literally. The other thing is like, we're just putting all these requirements into the AI and not thinking about how it's learning about us as we're learning from it.
Yeah.
And so you're telling it a lot of private stuff when you give it a bunch of business requirements.
Exactly.
Especially if it's like, I know Tanya works here and Tanya's asking about these things. I wonder if that employer is, you know what I mean? And so I think, so I realize I'm biased. So if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I am a security trainer. So I think everything's about education. And I am starting to work with clients where I'm doing literally like super intro to AI. Like we are going to learn how to chat. We're going to learn how to prompt and we're going to learn how to brainstorm and use this better and better. And then I just sprinkle security and privacy lessons throughout the exercises.
Nice.
And like, here I am, like a security nerd getting paid to just do like, they're like, we need you to bring us up to level 0 so we can start doing secure coding with you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And so I feel like I want everyone to have a certain amount of AI literacy. And then from there, we can start securing everything. And if we weave security and privacy, so I like to tag privacy along with everything I do.
Our privacy, what's happened in the UK recently is like, my perspective of privacy is like, wow, things are not good. But sorry, go on.
I know, right? And so, but if I weave that into all the lessons, just quietly, right?
Yeah.
I'm tricking you into doing a good job.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a lot easier to slowly build that. Like if that's how they learn how to use the tool is, I have to remember, is this private data? Is this a secure way to do this? If that's the way they learn it in the first place, they'll do better.
So Tanya, I believe you got a lot of API chapters or information in this book, right? So we've had APIs and lots of issues with APIs, and then here you're teaching how to secure APIs.
Oh, yes.
But MCP is supposed to be the new hot thing.
I know.
And I mean, that security research example is like, it's not been implemented very well. So it looks like we've got API issues and now we're just compounding it, if you like, with MCP, lack of security.
Yes, I know. I'm hoping that companies like Cursor that are leading the way in this will start setting some standards. Like the protocol requires authentication and authorization. The protocol requires, TLS between this and that, etc. Because right now it's a bit YOLO. Do whatever you want, as long as just in Canada we would say get her done. And that's not what I want. I want us to do a very good job. And so I feel like if you have someone like a company like Cursor leading the way, they need to lead the way safely and securely. Or I don't know if the company will be harmed, but certainly their customers will be.
Yeah, it's your data, right? So I mean, if that thing's, sorry to interrupt you again, the one of the examples was it was like personal data on the back end, and they were just able to query that, right?
It is amazing to me the things that we do the moment that there is a new technology.
Yep.
So when APIs came out, it was like way open. Like, I'm still teaching devs that when an AI can be contacted from the front end, that means it's on the internet and I can talk to it too.
Yeah.
And I might not say nice things to it, right? And so if I'm still teaching that, like AI is brand new, like serverless came out, same thing. Like we just forget all the basics, and like we need to start with threat modeling.
Yeah.
Like clearly no one threat modeled the MPC architecture. All my friends that do security architecture, they look at that and they go, we could do better. Let's work together. Maybe there needs to be an OWASP MPC protocol.
Sounds like it.
Maybe that's another project we should do.
So Tanya, you did some amazing free training online. Are you going to do that again? And like, also, can you tell us about the books?
Absolutely. So this is my first book, Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. And for every single chapter, I had a bunch of friends on each month, and we went over all the topics in the book and answered all the questions at the end of the chapter. And we did that for 11 months. And so I plan to do the same thing with the next book. So if you join my newsletter, which is just newsletter.shehackspurple.ca, because I'm Canadian, it's free, and then you will be notified as soon as we start doing the streams. And so this book, the first book, Alice and Bob Learn AppSec, is if you want to build a security program or become an application security engineer. It's a great book for that. This new book, Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding, is specifically for if you write code or you review code or you attack code, or also for architects. So it's specifically how to write and design secure applications. It has a lot of agnostic advice, so for any programming language, but then I dive deep into 10 different programming languages and 8 different frameworks. So I really nerd out in this book quite a bit. And so if you write code, this can help.
But Tanya, where can people reach you? Is it on LinkedIn? Is it X? Where's a good place to connect?
If you just look up She Hacks Purple, you will find me on basically any platform where you want to engage with me, except Meta ones.
Yeah.
I'm not a Meta person, and that's okay.
That's great. Tanya, thanks so much. It's great to meet you in person again.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thanks so much.